They're all around us. We all know at least one of them. They might appear like normal human beings, but just wait until they get a chance and suddenly, the beggar inside comes out. Voicey Veterans, get ready for some annoying and yet funny stories about the choosing beggars we all love to hate. Their childish attitude will remind you of an entitled child, but these bratty choosing beggars are somehow worse. It will shock you when you learn something surprising about who these beggars are. What do you call someone who asks for something for nothing? Why, a choosing beggar, of course. This person has to put up with a couple of choosing beggars who are asking for way too much. And for our fan-submitted story, this Voicey veteran receives a call from a choosing beggar who can't do maths. What ridiculous response did she give to this veteran's generous offer to help her out? You'll only find out by watching this episode of VoiceyHere's Choosing Beggars. This story was called Begs for a Lift to the Airport, Demands It's Done on Their Terms, Illegally Risking My Driver's License. That's not going to happen. Some background though. I'd once driven a friend who didn't wear their seatbelt and copped a $300 fine for it. To this story, a family friend's son needed a lift to the airport early one morning for a long planned trip. I lived about 10 miles from their place, and the 30-mile trip I was taking to work the opposite direction took me right past the airport, so it was a bit extra time out of the morning. 15 miles to the west to pick up the sons, then 45 miles east instead of 30 east. But they begged and both phoned me and said I was good to give them a lift. I turned up in the morning, loaded up their gear, the sons both in the car, and said goodbye to their parents. And we took off, drove a few miles up the freeway, and my seatbelt alert starts pinging. Son 1 in the front seat had taken off his belt. I asked him to put it on. He goes, "Nah, I don't do seatbelts." So I pulled over, looked back at the other son in the back seat, which didn't have alarms, and sure enough, he'd taken off his belt too. Then the arguing started. I was blunt as I could be that I'm not risking my license and my money so they could get a free lift I didn't care one way or another about. Roughly as follows, paraphrased because it was years ago, but they were both in on it. I'm not moving the car unless the belts are on. I've been fined once before, not doing it again.
I told you I don't do seatbelts. Dad's okay with it.
I'm not. Yours on too, not moving until they're on.
Do you have any idea how dangerous they are in an accident?
I blink. Son 1 then puts his behind him and clicks it in. No, belt goes around you. Doesn't count.
It'll turn off the alarm. Go, you'll see. We need to get going.
We can, when you put the belt on. I don't give a crap about the alarm. I care it's a $600 fine if you two don't have belts on.
Come on, we'll be late.
Your flight's not for another hour and a half. Belts on. Son 1 then calls his dad, complains we've stopped. Dad asks why. Son 1 explains. Then his dad tells him to just put the belt on. Son 1 says okay, but didn't notice I'd heard his dad's side too, and said his dad says I need to get a move on. Not until belts are on. This goes back and forth, to the point I will be late to work if I don't get going. Son 1 is all,
"Fine then, turn around, I'll get Dad to drive."
Belts on then.
No, I've told you already.
Then we're not moving. I get out my phone and browse idly, showing I'm not moving until their seatbelts go on. Son 1 phones his dad again. His dad sounds really ticked, but agrees to pick them up. Both sons get out, take their bags, one slams the door and boot, and I drive off. Choosy beggars left behind. I get to work, then I get a phone call that son 2 left his main luggage in my car and they want it dropped off at the airport urgently. They're flying out soon and they need it now. I tell them to get a taxi and I'll meet them out back of my work. They decide to argue it's my responsibility to get them the luggage and again argue the point. Half an hour later, one turns up in a taxi to get the other's luggage. I should note here I really don't know these guys well at all. I know one's name for sure, and I think I know the other, but I might have it mixed up with a cousin from the same suburb. Later that afternoon, I get a phone call from their dad that I've wasted his son's tickets. They weren't able to fly out, couldn't rebook quickly, and they'll miss half their vacation time now. And it was all my fault for stopping so long. I tried to explain as clearly as possible that I wasn't going to risk another huge fine and tick off my employer just for the inconvenience of a couple of ingrateful idiots, but ended up just hanging up on him. I'm still friends with their mother, who was the original friend of the family, but things are a bit strained between me and her husband and sons. For what it's worth, the sons were about 21 and 24 at the time it happened. Look, I get it, sometimes rules are stupid and you don't agree with them. Maybe you want to take the risk, you think it's not a long drive and you don't want to wear a seatbelt. But even if your argument is 100% correct on that point, there's still the practical side that the law is going to be enforced whether you like it or not. And it's really easy when you're not the one who has to pay the fine to be the one who breaks the law. People like that frustrate me to no end, because it's like they can't see anything outside of their personal bubble. And of course, who do they blame when they're late and can't catch their flight? Not themselves, of course. It's the driver who didn't want a $600 fine and didn't want to tick off his boss. When you start this story, you think that they're just kids, but if you're in your 20s, you should know better. This story was called Fun with Fishy Fees. I used to do aquarium maintenance as a side gig, decent enough work if you know how to do it. I charged by the gallon total system volume, $1 a gallon fresh water and $2 salt water, with a minimum $50 for clients nearby, more for further away. This was 15 years ago, but those were rock bottom prices at the time. The only catch was that I needed clients to stay on a routine schedule and respect that schedule. It made maintaining their systems, if they had regular service, and meant it wouldn't interfere with my job at the pet shop or my college classes. So to that end, I had fees for certain things to kind of force my clients to stay on track. A one-time service fee, an emergency fee for any call within 24 hours of desired maintenance, a holiday fee for booking service on any of the major American holidays. I was a jerk and put them each at $100 and warned clients as well as potential clients that the fees stack. To be clear, I never actually wanted to collect those fees. I just wanted to avoid unnecessary emergency or holiday services, all because a client forgot to book their monthly maintenance in a timely manner, considering a party, holiday, company, etc. People want their tanks to look stellar when they have guests, but they look the exact opposite right after servicing. Good, thorough maintenance really dusts up the water, and it can take hours depending on the filtration and turnover rate for that to clear. If I came out the day of company coming over, the client would be ticked off because the tank would temporarily look worse, and I'd be cranky if I had to reschedule my day to get or prepare water, drive out, and do the job. Explained that way, very few people booked frivolous emergency services. They generally accepted it, and most of my emergency calls were real emergencies: leaking systems, failure to restart from power outages, dying fish, etc. I once got an emergency call from a would-be new client at around 6 PM on New Year's Eve. Big saltwater system, so it'd be a great system to get because big systems tend to be more stable and easier work for more money than little systems. I explained the fee system and asked if he wanted one-time service. He said yes. I run the numbers and informed the client that there would be a $520 maintenance fee. He agreed and demanded I get there in a hurry. Not a problem, as I already had salt water ready to go for another client I was seeing in a few days. I got to the address, loaded up my car, and was on site in less than 30 minutes. What a mess. Tank is full of nothing but algae, dying corals, and fish looking super stressed. Oh, and did the client mention the party that they were setting up around me? Of course not. I immediately got to work. First things first, I set up my towels around the tank and started water chemistry test running. One of the tests took 20 minutes before it could be read, so I investigated the equipment during that time. I discovered that the lights were not in timer mode, but in on or hand, as was the surge system, so the whole tank was constantly lit and bombarded with high flow. I also discovered the heater was set too low, as was the air intake on the protein skimmer. These are all the things that someone manually set to improper conditions, not things that just went wrong. The whole time, the client was breathing down my neck. Couldn't I see that there was a party being set up? Couldn't I just fix things? The results from my tests came back, and the water was garbage. Salinity through the roof, obvious signs of overfeeding. I topped off with FW to correct the salinity, scrubbed the system, during algae off the corals, and did a good water change. By the time I was done, the fish looked to be settling down, and a few of the corals were trying to open up. It wasn't perfect and would still require intensive work to get things back on track, but it was no longer dire. There was one last thing to do: dosing. Most dosing doesn't affect water clarity, but carb, bicarb, and calcium can. The alkalinity was in the gutter, and the system desperately needed bicarb. The water was already pretty cloudy from my work, so I dosed bicarb. It made next to no difference in the clarity. It was almost time for the party, so I packed my stuff and went to collect my fee. I always wrote up a receipt that was really more of suggestions and instructions for upkeep between bookings. This tank practically needed a book. The client tried to hand me a 20. I informed him rather sternly that we agreed on 520, and that was what was invoiced. He argued that I ruined his tank. I pointed that without the rest of the equipment, water change, and buffering, he would lose his corals. I also explained that $20 didn't even cover my costs. He exclaimed that his tank was a mess for the party. It looked better murky than algae encrusted in my humble opinion. He brought the pay up to $50. More than fair in his opinion, as the tank was cloudy and guests were due in about 15 minutes. We went back and forth for a few minutes before I told him that my soggy, disheveled butt wasn't leaving until he forked over the money. When it became clear that I was parking my butt right there in his living room until payment met, he eventually offered $220. Final offer. That would be my baseline for his system on a regular scheduled run, so I took it. I was tired, ticked, and eager to get the heck out of there before I was outnumbered by his friends or guests. I did tell him though that I would be blacklisting him for no future services, as well as informing my colleagues in maintenance. He laughed it off. I went home and relayed it to a few people I knew doing the maintenance thing. I don't think he knew I was serious, but I was ticked that I was doing a maintenance run on New Year's Eve after an already long day at work. Fast forward a few days, and a customer came into the store, demanding to know, "Who was that person who messed with her system?" Guess who was that person? It was me. Turns out New Year's Eve guy was her housemate. She had gone out of town for the winter break from school to see her family, who lived maybe an hour away, for a month and left him to care for the tank. The more we went back and forth, the more it became clear that he had messed up the tank and then made it worse by screwing around trying to fix it. He had been the one to reset the pumps, heater, lights, and skimmer, and he blamed me. She demanded to know why her maintenance guy suddenly didn't want to see her tank. To make matters even better, when New Year's Eve client realized that he had clearly messed up her tank, he had called me instead of her regular service guy to cover his tracks. The regular guy just so happened to know someone I was friends with in the maintenance scene. It was a small scene back then, and few professional companies existed in the area. I think a lot of people like to think they know what they're doing when it comes to things like, say, an aquarium. So when the actual expert comes in to fix it, of course they're not going to respect them and listen to them, and they're not going to think their time is actually valued what it's set to be valued at. Even if they didn't think it was worth that amount of money, that's the price that they agreed to. I mean, you've basically scammed someone if you've agreed to a really high price and then you try and hand them a 20. Like, he probably knew he wasn't going to get away with only paying 20, but he knew he would get a few hundred off. I think if you're in a similar situation to the hero of this story, sounds like the moral of this story is get them to pay a deposit first. This fan-submitted story was called Choosy Beggar Nearly Costs Herself $99. I work in tech support for a satellite company. We have 3 options when it comes to dispatching technicians to customers' homes: a one-time fee of $99 that comes with a warranty, an equipment plan that waives the $99 fee, or an on-demand option. The last option is for when customers refuse to troubleshoot, and even if they have the equipment plan, there is still a $99 fee for the technician. It's basically a convenience fee, since without the troubleshooting, we can't properly inform the technician on what he or she is walking into. The cast: I'm me, customer is customer, and supervisor is soup. Thank you for calling company, this is my name. How can I help you today?
You're the third person I've talked to today. I've been on the phone for 2 hours.
Oh my goodness, that does sound frustrating. I didn't get any information before I got you, but I have you now, so how can I help you? Customer huffs angrily.
I already told the last 2 agents.
Yes, I understand, but I didn't get to talk to either of them. Could you tell me what's going on?
The TV in the other room won't connect to the main box.
I can help. Let's bring up your account. I managed to get the account pulled up, having to explain at each bit of needed information that I didn't talk to a rep prior to her talking to me, so I didn't have the information yet. I ask if she's at home ready to troubleshoot.
I'm at home, but I'm not doing anything. You're just going to set up the technician for me.
Yes, that is definitely something we can do. However, without troubleshooting, there is an automatic $99 fee assessed when the tech closes out his work order.
No.
No?
No, I'm not troubleshooting, and no, I'm not paying for a tech. I have the equipment plan.
I took the account over. She removed the equipment plan 31 days after her last tech visit, which was 91 days ago, so out of warranty. That is the fee without troubleshooting. I see you removed the equipment plan 2 months ago. I know you said I'm the third person you talked to. If you agree to troubleshoot with me, I promise it won't take long, and I promise I won't make you repeat any steps you've already done. We can offer the other options if we still need a tech.
I can do that.
I take the customer through troubleshooting, and she indeed does need a technician. Now, I'm way too nice, but I'm also very stingy when it comes to crediting anything but time without service. I place her on hold before launching into the options for the technician. I head to my supervisor and ask to go outside of policy and credit the service call as a one-time courtesy since she is literally 1 day outside of the warranty. My supervisor is awesome and knows if me of all people is asking for credit, there's a very good reason. My request is approved, but it's honestly just a backup if she refuses the equipment plan. I appreciate you patiently holding. We normally have the 2 options for a tech. I go over them. But for you as a one-time courtesy, I had my supervisor approve a free SVC call as a one-time courtesy. As long as you understand that even if something happens in the future, even if it's just 1 day outside the warranty, you have to add the equipment plan or pay full price. Which option would you like? She picks option 3. We are working on setting up the date when the customer has a revelation.
You had better credit me for the box not working too.
Oh, I think you misunderstand. I got the service call credited instead of crediting the 3 days the box was out, since the service call being credited gives you a higher value.
I don't care, credit both.
Ma'am, I can credit one or the other. If you want the credit for 3 days on the box, the offer of the free service call will be off the table. The few days on the box is less than $1, but if you prefer that I credit that, I'll be more than happy to accommodate.
Get me an agent who will credit both.
Okay, do you mean a supervisor or another tech agent? We have to clarify as we're not allowed lateral transfers. I tell the customer this as she indeed doesn't want a soup, just another agent she thinks she can bully.
I'll just hang up and call back.
You can do that if you like. However, I will note your account explaining how we gave you 3 options and you declined all 3. The next agent will be under no obligation to honor my generous offer of a free service call, and honestly, their supervisors likely won't approve it either.
And that wouldn't be against policy?
No ma'am, it wouldn't. The customer is quiet for a few minutes, thinking it over.
I'll take the free service call.
When a choosing beggar has tried their very hardest, and they're at their very limit, only then will they admit defeat. It's still a rare occurrence, but it does happen. You just have to give them an ultimatum that they can't refuse. If you'd like your story to be narrated by me, don't forget to visit the subreddit r/VoiceyHere, link below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.